This video is proudly sponsored by DigimonCard.io for all your Digimon card, deck building, deck list, card pricing, and discussion needs.
Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today we have a double top 16 breakdown. This past weekend was like the farewell event for BT11 here in North America. So we had Top Cut's Webcam Regionals as well as CoreTCG's Webcam Regionals. And if you guys want any of the deck lists for these events, they're both linked in the description below for both these web pages, as well as we did do the streaming for it, and by we I mean me and DigiPanda. We did both live streams of these events, and I'm honestly really exhausted from it. It was a really good time, but a lot of work for this and making sure to get all the deck lists and just everything else. So if you guys want to see the Twitch VODs, they're going to be linked in the description as well as on these web pages, and they will both be re-uploaded to my YouTube later this week as well if you guys want to see them here. So that is there. Thank you again to Top Cut and CoreTCG for running these events, for letting both of us do the commentary for it, as well as giving me these deck lists to give to you guys. And again, this is pretty much the end of the BT11 meta. We do have BT12 formally releasing at the end of this week, and tournaments commencing after that. And it's what an interesting meta this was to kind of end this kind of set and everything else, especially since we had like pretty much the set release and we had like a drought before all of the events were for the finals around the world. And then also we had the Ultimate Cup format, and then we also had the rules change April 1st with also Greymon X at 1. So ending the format with both of these pie charts being pretty healthy, more or less, for the amount of variation on here is great. And we just have a lot of decks to kind of talk about. So we're going to talk about the top placing list for pretty much the archetypes in between. There's a lot to go over. So I'm just trying my best to do like a little coverage. I also know it's like the end of the format, so you know, not all of these decks are going to be viable in next set, so it's kind of going into that. But I do want to just do a breakdown, just kind of cover what was being played this weekend and just all the topping lists from there. So we're going to again go over the topping list pretty much between the two, so kind of had a good balance between the two of them, fortunately. And we're going to start off with our first place list from the Top Cut event. This is Akone's first place MetalGaruru X, and if this is the last MetalGaruru list I ever go over, I'll be super happy. I've been seeing this deck top since I think August of last year, which we're almost a full year into covering this deck. It's been so strong for so long. It hasn't gotten any direct nerfs. It has, you know, one bad matchup that got less powerful as the meta developed, and it's just still a really, really strong deck. So nothing I would say too particular about this one. We do have one copy of High Speed Plug-in D for this build too, and some interesting ratios assigning for Hammer Spark and Blue Mem Boost. Not something that Hammer Spark I think is a decision point still for this deck, and yeah, very, very strong still, being able to get a lot of flexibility and a lot of strength, still being able to just kind of go off and go for the win. So congrats to Anoukhone for their first place finish for their build here. And then also first place for the Top Cut event is Examon, which, you know, this has been I would say like a tier 2 list for quite a bit. A lot of people have been playing it, but it's something that got a lot better in one. Mulligans, I think, helped this deck out a lot. And then also, I'd say one of its harder matchups, I would say Black War Grey X, got a little bit worse, and this deck was a little bit more consistent, and it's just such a monster of a deck if you're able to get the pieces out. And there are ways for some decks to interact with it, and it is, you know, weak to some plays. But man, if you set up with an Examon and a Slayerdramon on the board at the same time, you out a lot of decks already present in the meta. So it's really interesting to see this finally get, I'd say, like a really big win for this weekend. And we did get a couple tops between both events for Examon, but it's been kind of just on the on a lot of people's radars. I don't think it was anyone's. I don't know. I'm surprised it won an event. I'll be honest. I'm really, really surprised it won an event. I don't think that this deck is bad, but I didn't think it was good enough to go 9-0, which, again, both these events were 9 rounds with the amount of people they had, which is crazy. So for this deck to go 9-0, that's a really big accomplishment, and congrats to Yovarni for their finish there. I think they're going to be doing some also just going over their matches and their deck lists and everything. So if that happens, I'll make sure to link that as well. But very, very good job for Varney. I do like also the Kaiser Nail tech. I think that's a nice little add. Even on stream, we saw a play where he had like Slayerdramon, and underneath it was like you went Groundramon into Slayerdramon, and then you went Kaiser Nail to play the Groundramon from underneath the Slayerdramon, and then you're able to DNA Digivolve into Examon, which I thought was a really neat play you could do with this. So obviously just a one of, not something you consistently do for it, but I do like the idea of what that can present for this deck. And again, it's a very big monster deck if you're able to go off with it. So congratulations there for their first place finish. Next up, we have Ulforce from Alejandro Ramos, and if you guys haven't seen it already, there's just a lot of blue topping for this end of season for BT11, and Ulforce does get a little bit of a buff in the next set. We do have like another level 6, which I think is neat. I don't think it's something that like helps invigorate the deck a little bit more. It is just like a nice little add for it, but the just kind of how the deck works in general, I think is solid. Still, you are very tamer based, which does hurt some matchups in a way, but if you're able to go off with this deck, you do have a lot of potential to do very well. You are running a bunch of tamers. You are running Mat and Sword, but you're not running the Delicate Plan, which some decks do like to tech in with this because this is strong-ish, but there are a lot of frail things you can hit into, especially since you're just a 12k compared to something, you know, you don't have jamming most of the time and you don't have any protection outside of evade, which you can use on the attack if you play a tamer and get your cycle for it. But I think Ulforce is still a really neat deck. I think it's going to be played a lot in the upcoming format. And I think the price of Arena probably stops more people from playing it. Unfortunately, since it is a secret rare tamer, you do need 4 of, so kind of a little expensive for some players, but I think Ulforce is still going to be played in this next set, and we'll have to see how good it does. But congratulations to Alejandro again for their finish there in Top Cuts event. Next up, we have in CoreTCGs. This is James Leachy's Hernaez second place Black or Gray X, and obviously this is a deck that did get a little bit worse. I think I've said that like 5 times in this video so far, but it does have a lot of power too. The only thing that you're really missing out, you still have your protection more or less with the Greymon X. Not as great, but still there. It's really the cost reduction to go up your chain for a lot of things. And I have been seeing some people play win rate 60% to get there, but Leachy not deciding to go that route, just going the kind of more pure route for this deck. Having 4 copies of Cool Boys, only 1 Rep Mem Boost, a Crimson Blaze, which is a pretty good card. We did see it this weekend. This is a really good tech against a lot of decks right now, but Crimson Blaze is really strong, and also Hades Force. Also finding room for both copies of Omni X, which is not always a given there, and only 1 copy of Gaiomon, which can be very strong for this deck in general. But this is a really good build. We do think we're getting pretty much an entire new Greymon line in the next set too, so that's going to there's just going to be a lot of pieces for a lot of these Agumon and Greymon lists. I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon, and just congratulations to James on their finish there. Next up, third place for Top Cut. This is the CoreTCG. This is Chazz's third place Blue Hybrid. And man, it's been like a year since Blue Hybrid started out as a deck, and it still gets a little bit of tops here and there, which is really interesting. Obviously, we do have Tommy at 1, but the meta is kind of like in a format where you're okay to be a little bit slower. We do see Blue Flare, which we'll talk about later in this video, getting some tops, and it kind of has the same idea where you just kind of have to set up your resources. Resources in this deck is just a bunch of tamers. Resources in Blue Flare is just kind of your Digicross pieces to go off. But once you're able to do that, you're able to play your cards and get some stuns and get some attacks in that are really hard to interact with. And because of that, you're really able to win without a lot of interaction with your opponent as well, which is really strong. Some new cards from the release about a year ago. We do have Gaiomon, which is a BT11 rookie. It has an inheritable 1 attacking once per turn. If you have a tamer in play, you can return one of your opponent's level 3 Digimon to their owner's hand, which is great for memory blockers and the like. We do have the ad of Leomon. Leomon is not always the package for you, but that's the one for this one. We also have the Mirage Galgamon, which I really do like this as a level 6. It does have a lot of disruption effects and lets you also do some burn damage as well. 1 copy of Death X, which obviously wasn't around for the original Blue Hybrid run, and then also Sorai, which we've been seeing a lot of Blue Dex tech in the first place. The fact that it is a lot of source removal, the fact that it gets some stun across the board, I think this is a really strong card too. So congratulations to Chazz there for their finish with this Blue Hybrid, and we'll see if it keeps going into set 12. I'm not sure anymore. It is a really strong deck when it goes off. So anyways, we go into 4th place for Top Cuts. This is Abdur's Blue Flare. I told you we were talking about it in a second, and Blue Flare is definitely a deck I think that got released in BT10, and a lot of people kind of saw it, didn't really have the pieces you needed, but with the release of BT11, you do get a couple more pieces, including the launcher, including the Z Gray, and including the Dracomon. Just having another good kind of Blue Flare rookie is great. Gaussmon still is like the best one just because you get to attack for damage and then play something for free as well. But you just get a lot of great cycle from this deck, especially since you have the triple tamer can be great. The Sora Joe is also a really good tamer against some matchups, which you will have just a lot of sources out or cards out without any sources, which is great. And again, very flexible in this deck. The fact that you do Digicross into essentially a Metal Greymon that lets you attack on turn and also get 2 swings. That's very strong, and the stun and everything else with this. Your opponent really has to know how this deck works and play around it to do well, and if they don't, you get to capitalize a lot of advantage from it. So this is Abdur's deck, and congratulations on their 4th place there. Next up, we have David Vu's 6th place Crossheart, and we did have both the Merva and also the X7 version of it top this weekend. This is for Top Cuts event, and I would say Merva is still the most popular build of the list, at least more popular on the top 16 side for what it does. And man, this deck does seem like really obnoxious at times. We were watching games this weekend that it looked like they were just completely behind. They wouldn't have any chance to win, and then they just drop like 3 blinding rays, and then they just have enough memory to do their play and just win on the spot. So a little unfun, I would say, in that sense. But you do get like a lot of good cycle, and it is not just like a deck that you need to just you just turn things sideways. There is, I think, a little bit of thought of card choices and what plays you make. You have usually 2 or 3 plays you can make during most turns. You have to kind of decide which one's the best one for your deck. And additionally, most of the time you have to pick which pieces for your combos and your Digicrosses make sense. You're not always going to be able to get all the pieces you need, and being able to have like the foresight for that, I think is strong. So obviously a little bit more aggressive for the Merva side for it, but I do think this is a really interesting playstyle for a deck like this. And then also, so this is Jesus's 6th place Cross 7, which was used in the core event. And this one is a little bit interesting. There's a lot of kind of neat tech too. So 1 blinding ray for this one, 2 Crimson Blaze, and a Fireball. And again, some decks just really can't play around the Crimson Blaze, which is a little rough for some decks, but being able to get a free win like that is kind of nice. And you are running 2 of the Zeeg and 2 of the Omni Shout. None of the DX, which I've been starting to agree with, just the fact that this Inheritable is too good for the flexibility of the DX and what that one does. And then a 4-3-2-4 split between your Tamers and stuff. But obviously not a lot of room for tech in these lists, especially if you want the consistency, and especially if you're running the Cross 7 build, because you need to have more pieces in it. But still really, really strong, and congrats to Jesus for their finish there. Next up, we have Bobby Lau's 10th place Machinedramon, and Bobby's definitely really, really good with Machinedramon. We saw him in both events, but this is his top 10 finish here in Top Cuts event. And you do get a bit of a buff in BT12 with the release of the Castramon X Antibody, which is such a monster of a card. You do have to kind of have the setup of going into one of your other Machinedramons or Castramons and then going from there on top of it. But man, you just get so much advantage from what that card gets to do, and it's in a really, really good spot. So Castramon, being able to get your protection, being able to get all your inheritables underneath it is very strong. And the attack of the heavy mobile Digimon is not only good for like potentially like setting up like a good card. So like if you just need Machinedramon and you want to be able to attack with like Metal Gray and like with a Metal Tyrannomon underneath it, you get like just the fact that you get the Blitz and the Rush is fantastic. And then also just the fact that you can just win the game with this card in its own right too. So Analog Man is great for generating your resources and being really obnoxious there, and just a really cool deck. We've been seeing a lot more people in Machinedramon in the last couple of weeks, and in general, like with Examon as well and everything, a lot of EX3 kind of boosted decks that we haven't been seeing on the release of the deck have kind of been seeing more and more play, and I think that's really, really cool. So this is Bobby's list, and congratulations to their 10th place finish there. Moving to the core event, this is Neil's 10th place Grandis. And we didn't really see a lot of Grandis this weekend, and it's really interesting to see that. I know going into the format, at least at the start of BT11 in like the finals format around the world, there were quite a bit of people on that Grandis train, but I think most people have kind of gotten off or just not been playing it as much. And the fact that you do get to do an OTK with this deck is very, very strong. And I don't know. I've been talking about Grandis for just as long as MetalGaruru X, and I don't have much more to say. I do like the addition of Grandel Soul and Death Examon. There are some matchups where you do have to kind of beat down their wall, especially like against Examon. Like being able to use a Grandel Soul or a Death X against Examon is very strong for you. But You wouldn't think you'd want to be putting these in something that's normally looked at like a glass cannon OTK list, but I do think it helps you there. 2 copies of X Antibody too, which normally this is like the most I've really seen in a Grandis deck, and it did put in a lot of work in this weekend for the matches I saw. It does come up for some of your matchups, and sometimes you just don't have enough memory to go into Grand Kuwagamon, into Grandis, and this kind of helps you in that too. So that is the build there. Congratulations for Neil on their 10th place finish with Grandis. We've got 3 more lists to look at. Here is Adrian's 12th place Merva loop. And we did have 2 Merva loops, both of them, I think, in the top cut side of it. But this is a really fun deck in a lot of ways. The fact that you get a lot of recursion for it. And just like purple does have like such a capacity for some of these loop builds, especially like the biggest thing I like about this is like the Merva, you get to play 2 level 4 lowers, but a lot of people think it's just like the Crossheart ones or cards with retaliation. But you can also use this card to get back a Psychmon or Gazimon from your trash, which is fantastic in a lot of matchups. So if your opponent has like an out for like either one of these, but like, for example, Gazis are really great and against a lot of decks, and Psychmon's like Psychmon against like something like Crossheart, you want to be able to recycle them if they're able to use like a Darulu to get out of it, right? Being able to play the Merva to get this back and just get a bunch of bodies on board, I think is very strong in this, as well as just the traditional loop with the Cerberus Mons and what you're able to accomplish with that. So, and you also have in deck Tamer removal with Chaos Mode, especially with the Dead or Alive, which can trigger and get this back, and just everything else. It's a really fun deck. I'm happy to see that this is getting some tops this weekend, and congrats again to Adrian for their finish there. Next up, we have Shane with their Jesmon, and just one's okay. I am surprised to see it did get a top 16 in this one. We have been seeing people testing with it a little bit, and I have seen some interesting builds too. It's not technically Jesmon, but we've been seeing more of like the Ganku X and Ganku, just kind of like more of a mid-range build where you get you go up to your GX a little bit more consistently and not as like aggressively in that way. So that's kind of neat there. But we've been seeing a lot of people trying Jesmon a little bit more. I think it does benefit a lot from the fact that we do have mulligans, which is really nice, and you do have a lot of your personal choices for some of these Sistermons as well. So I don't have a lot more to say about Jesmon. We haven't really gotten a lot of support from this deck in a little bit. I know a lot of people are still trying with the deck, and being able to get top 16 in a 400-person event is a really great accomplishment with a deck like this. So just a big congrats to Shane for this one. And then lastly, we do have Benjamin Moore's 15th place Beezlemon, and we only have one. I believe this is the only one. I believe this is the only. Yeah, this is the only Beezlemon top for this event, and it has been topping the last couple of weeks around the world, but this weekend this is the only one that did get that top here. And I know a lot of people have been trying this deck, and the advanced deck obviously added a lot to it, and we do get a whole lot more for this deck in BT12 as well. So I think a lot of people are trying this deck because it's kind of like a primer for BT12, and I don't really think this deck is really going anywhere. It's going to be a lot more present once we finally get into that BT12 meta there. So I don't have a lot to say about this more than that. We do, like, some of the pieces are going to be moved around, but like Wizardmon's going to probably stay. Deathslinger is really great. Rivals Barrage is great. We do also have like a new Tamer that we have to deal with, and then also I do like the idea of what the this just has jamming, which is interesting. It is a wizard type too, which sometimes comes up, so cool, kind of interesting tech there. I always like to run like the promote, Ginkuamon promote, which you can, digivolve on top of like your rookies that you play for free, your Impmons off your guys, and being able to get rush yourself. But I think this is a really interesting build for it because of that. And again, we're going to be seeing a lot more of this deck in the next couple of weeks. But that's going to be it for me. If you guys can't tell, I'm just exhausted. I'm just probably going to edit this real quick and upload it and have it for you guys in the morning. So that's going to be it for me. Thank you again for all of the support you guys have shown me in the last couple of weeks. And if you guys haven't subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. We're going to have the VODs for these tournaments on this channel too later this week. So make sure to keep an eye out on for that. And I'm going to go get some, I'm just so tired. I'm going to go to bed. So that's going to be it for me. And thank you guys so much for watching.
Damn it. Damn it.